We go. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I am so pleased that you've taken today and the opportunity to invest in yourselves. We know as the world is opening back up, things like this are going to be harder and harder to carve out. And that's because we will feel guilt and obligation, and we will feel all the stresses of life back to normal without actually understanding how to manage it. And so thank you so much for joining. I'm Stevie Carr, founder and CEO of Wise Wellness Guild, and I'm just so pleased to see all of you here today. We have today an incredibly special program that was brought to us by two of our most engaged WISE members. Is something that they're incredibly passionate about. And I love when members come to us with ideas on how we can really help each other. This is actually how we're going to drive change, is creating a community of support and accountability. And so today, I encourage you to stay accountable to yourself, but be present for others around you too, because we will never be a well society unless all of us are making the changes together. So today's conversation is all about stress support, why you can't outrun stress and how to manage it. So it's not about blowing past those red flags. It's not about just getting ahead of things or staying up and working 19 hours a day so you can go and do nothing on vacation. That's not what it's all about. And today, Maggie Wilhelm, LPCC and WISE mental health coach in residence, as well as Meagan Connley, WISE member and actively engaged member of this group, are here to share with you about how being under constant stress seems to be normalized, but it doesn't mean that we're physically equipped to handle it. We'll talk about how stress really appears from a data and science perspective, how it impacts your body short and long term, and practical tips for stress management. I know we've got a couple of incredible groups here today, so I'm really excited to see people rolling in. I encourage you just a couple of things. One, I already mentioned it. I encourage you to be engaged. And that's just for your own benefit, because we know that multitasking isn't a real thing. Two, I encourage you to grab water, tea, if you want to eat sandwich, like whatever you need to do during this time. This is all about you. I encourage for you to use this time to nourish yourself. And three, I really ask for you to participate. There's going to be some prompts here in the chat that we're going to throw in. And if you want to, come back to us with additional questions, we highly encourage that. If you want to come off of mute, I always offer this and nobody really takes me up on it, but if you have a burning question, feel free to raise your hand and I can kind of I can stop in. But I really want this to be conversational, and I know that these amazing women do as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Maggie and Meagan. Thank you so much for being here today and being willing to share with our amazing community about how we can really manage like what is stress, like what is the science of it, right, behind it, but also like how are we going to manage this as the world's opening up and we're kind of moving into this next phase of life. Awesome.
Awesome. Can you all see my screen?
I can.
Good,
Yeah.
Meagan.
Perfect.
I'll kick it over to Maggie to get us started.
Yeah, thank you, Stevie, for that fabulous introduction. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you're here. First, we just want to kind of start by discussing, what is stress, and by looking at what have we been going through over the last year and a half. And as Stevie said, we are moving into a new phase in life. COVID is we're in the midst of big COVID changes. So it's no surprise to any of us that this last year was very stressful. But what's interesting is that we are seeing an increase in mental health issues. So pre-COVID statistics looked about 1 in every 4 persons was experiencing depression or anxiety. Post-COVID, we're seeing that number has increased to about 1 in every 3. So we are seeing big changes in our recent statistics in terms of how it's affecting us. Our stress has gone up and our mental health issues are increasing as well. So let's kick it off to the next slide.
Yeah, so even before COVID, I think it feels like, as Steve, you kind of said in the introduction, that stress is normal, that we always have to be on the go. There's something to be doing. We don't have time to rest, sleep when you're dead kind of thing. It's like this shirt is kind of saying it all. I was really shocked when I saw this during Mental Health Awareness Week being posted. I tried relaxing, but it stressed me out. I mean, I think we can laugh at things like that and think it's funny because we all know that we're in it together. And at the same time, we can also say, this isn't the way that we want it to be. And I have control over myself and my boundaries and the things that I say yes to and the things that I say no to. And I'm empowered to share what I learn, to make change at my work, to make change within my family, to say that this isn't the way that I want life to be. And so that's really why we're here today, to share the things that we've learned from our experience, from our practices, from our research, and be in community together to share all of that with you. So just starting to introduce ourselves a little bit more and why we're here today. So I am a consultant at 8451, which is a wholly owned company of Kroger, and really at a point of kind of transition in my career of getting more into the D&I space, HR, training and development kind of work that really for me was fueled by my stress story and my healing journey. I have lived with anxiety, depression, and eating disorders, and had a lot of stress in my life for years that I didn't deal with and tried to shove it all down. And well, my body kind of fought back, and through my healing of my physical body, my mind became more clear and really just unleashed passion for helping others, thinking about how we work together, thinking about emotions and how do we process them, things that are happening in our life that we take into the workplace, like we're the same person, we're human, and it doesn't go away when we log onto the computer or walk into an office. And so that's really where my passion lies. And I'm excited to be here and talk more about my journey and the things that I've learned along the way, especially through working with a health coach and a therapist. So I'm excited to have Maggie's perspective as well.
And my name is Maggie Wilhelm, and I am a therapist and empowerment coach. And I am passionate about helping people through their stress, their struggle, their mental health issues, and really finding their voice, finding their confidence, and empowering them to be the best version of themselves. And like Meagan, of course, like every other human on the planet, I've experienced stress. And for me, a lot of that was more, I think, internalized, learning to be assertive, learning to set healthy boundaries, learning how to use my voice in an effective way, so that my emotions felt more regulated and less out of control, and gave me the space to really live within my values, and to speak to what's important to me, and find those values in my everyday life. So we are so happy to be here with you guys today, and we hope that this information is really helpful, and we're going to give you some very practical tools that you can start using today to hopefully reduce your stress, especially as Stevie said, we're moving into this changing world. So to kick off today, we're inviting you to just take a moment to sit and breathe and relax. So I know most of your screens are off, and that is totally fine. We want you to feel relaxed and be in your own space and feel comfortable. But if you're busy, if you're trying to do multiple things, just take these 2 minutes for yourself. We're just going to do a quick progressive muscle relaxation to bring us into the moment. So put your feet on the floor, take a breath, and just relax for a moment. And I'm going to guide us through this. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to walk through this muscle relaxation, and you're going to try to tense your muscle, the muscle group that I invite you to tense for about 5 seconds. And it's just important to be breathing throughout. Breathing, always remember to not hold your breath, to try to breathe in for about 3 to 4 seconds and breathe out for even longer. So 4 to 5 seconds when you're breathing out. So just start by finding a comfortable position, whether it's sitting up or lying down, and try to be in a space where you're not going to be interrupted. I want you to focus on your body and begin to notice if your mind is wandering. That's okay. It's very natural. Just bring it back to breathing and to the muscle group that we're focusing on. So take a deep breath through your abdomen. Hold for a second and exhale slowly. Notice your stomach rising and your lungs filling with air. As you exhale, imagine the tension in your body being released and flowing out of your body. Inhale and exhale. Slowly feel your body starting to relax. So we're going to start by tightening the muscles in our upper body, in our head actually. So tighten the muscles in your forehead by raising your eyebrows as high as you can and hold it for about 5 seconds. And then let that go. Now we're going to do the same thing with our mouth and our cheeks. So tighten those muscles, widen your mouth, and hold that for about 5 seconds. Now release. And notice when you release the feeling of softness in your muscle group there. So next we're going to do our eyes. I'm going to close your eyes tightly and just hold that for 5 seconds. And release. Now we're going to hold our head back, looking at the ceiling. And you can kind of feel the tightness in the back of your neck as you do this. So hold for 5 seconds. If any of your muscles feel uncomfortable or you're having tension there, don't strain your body. This is about relaxing. And release. As you release that, you might feel your neck sink in a little bit and notice how those muscles feel. My neck's cracking. Breathing in and out. So now we're going to go down our body a little bit, and we're going to do our fists next. So tighten both of your fists, clench them. And release. Now you do the same thing with your biceps. Clench your biceps. Show those guns. And then as you release, let your arms just lie by your side, at your side. Then we're going to go into our shoulders. So put your shoulders up and tighten. You can feel it in your back, your upper back and shoulders. Feel that heaviness. And release. And then we're going to go into our stomach. So if you're sitting or lying down, just clench those muscles like you're doing an abdominal sit-up or exercise. And release. And as we're going, if you feel certain muscles tight, just noticing where that stress is in your body, can use movement to release that tension. And now we're going to go into our lower body. So we're going to do our buttocks next. Tighten those muscles, letting go of the tension, the stress. And then falling, letting loose. Imagine your hips just sinking into the seat. Next, we go into our thighs. So if you press your knees together, think of holding like a penny or a quarter in between your knees. Hold that. And release. Don't forget to breathe. So next we're going to flex our feet. So pointing your toes towards the ground, or like a ballerina would point her toes or his toes, to feel that tension in your calves. I can tell my calves are sore. Hold that. And release. Next, we're going to do our feet. So curl your toes under, tensing your feet. And release. Just take a moment to breathe, knowing that you're in a relaxing space. This next hour is for you. Hopefully you don't have any responsibility at this moment, and you can really dive into how to take care of yourself. And imagine a wave of relaxation just slowly coming over you, pouring through your body, over your head, down your torso, into your lower body, all the way down to your feet. And feel the relaxation drift over you. So we just wanted to give you guys this to get started today. We're going to be talking a lot about movement and how stress affects your body. So I hope that was helpful. That was called a progressive muscle relaxation. And we're going to dive right in. So let's get started.
Thank you, Maggie, for leading us in that. I could feel my shoulders is usually where I hold a lot of my tension, and I could feel it just melting away. So thanks for leading us through that. So we're going to start off today by talking about what is stress. So just kind of giving a definition to it so we know what we're talking about. Stress is a reaction that's happening in your body. It's something neurological and physiological. So it's something that's happening in your brain and it's happening in your body. It's a reaction to something that you've experienced, to a challenge, a demand, a perceived threat. So this is something that, your body is getting ready because you think that there's a threat coming. So stress is kind of that response that's coming up within you. So just to talk a little bit more about some other terms, a stressor is the thing that is causing the stress. So the thing that you have perceived to be a threat. And this can be something external, so something in your environment. You get a call from your boss, you have a meeting, you have a big project, cicadas are annoying. Like there's something that's happening that's making you feel like, oh gosh, like I need to guard up. I need to get ready for this. It can also be something internal. It can be something that's happening within your mind. It could be me telling myself, I'm not good enough. I'm not blank enough. I'm not equipped to handle this situation. I'm putting myself down. It could be me thinking about body image, my identity, memories, things, basically any kind of thing that you're perceiving, again, to be a threat where you're not equipped to handle the situation that's happening. And so you have this stressor, you have something that's causing that response. You have stress happening in your body, which we're going to talk a little bit about the stress response cycle. So something stressful happens, there's stuff happening in your body. So cortisol's going up, you're getting ready, you're getting ready for this fight or whatever is coming to flee. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we say the stress response cycle. So stress can be acute, meaning it's something that happens, it's immediate, in the moment. Again, like that one-time thing that's coming up right now. Oh gosh, this meeting's coming up. I'm stressed about this. So your body is getting ready for that. And again, dumping that cortisol and this adrenaline and other hormones going on so that you're ready for the fight or flight or freeze that needs to happen to help you survive that situation. We're meant to handle that. Our bodies know what to do with it. Again, all those things that are happening in our body is meant to be happening, and we know how to work through that. What we really aren't equipped for is when it becomes chronic stress, when something keeps happening repeatedly, multiple of the same stressor or different stressors, and you're just constantly in this state of fight, flight, or freeze. We're not meant to sit there. And so what we're going to talk about today is how do we avoid getting there? And if we think that we're there, how do we know? And how do we kind of manage it in the acute moment so that we're kind of closing that cycle and we're not letting it become that chronic stress stage? Some other terms that we want to talk about is the difference of distress versus eustress. So I think when we think about stress, we always maybe put a negative connotation on it. It's something that feels unpleasant. Maybe it's scary. It's something like that's causing some anxiety in me. Good things or things that you really want, you've been working for, that you're trying to achieve, big goals, those can also be stressful. It can motivate you, it can increase that performance, but it might be also still triggering that response of, oh, I need to prepare for this. So when we kind of plot this out a little bit, you'll see some things on here that maybe you might not have considered to be stressful before. Oops, let me get back to that, sorry. So, like getting promoted, buying a house, like those might be, again, the you stress that I want these things, I'm working toward them, but it's also causing stress in my body. Maybe it's impacting my time, it's impacting my money, it's impacting the things that I'm saying to myself. I don't know if I'm qualified for this. I'm not sure if I can do this. I have all these things that I need to do and I'm not doing enough. So there might be something both physical and internal that's happening that's causing you stress. Not getting enough sleep is stressful on your body. We'll talk a little bit more about not eating enough, constant dieting, or overtraining your body is also stressful. So something that I think I would encourage all of you to do is, what are the things that are stressors in your life? Can you plot them out? Can you see what are things that are happening constantly, things that are happening once in a while? Is it more of the positive things that I'm really wanting, or is it more of these distressful things that I feel like I can't avoid? What are some of the things that are causing you stress, and keep those in mind. And then we'll talk later about maybe how can you eliminate some of those, how can you reframe some of those and think differently about them. In any situation, all of these, the stress, again, the cycle needs to be closed. You need to be managing these things if it's something that's ongoing or something that's happening once a day.
Yeah, so when we think about stress, probably most of us have heard about cortisol, and this is the stress hormone. It's the hormone that's released in our body naturally, and it happens for a reason. It's to protect us in situations and to tell our body, cue our body to jump into action, that fight or flight mode. And it helps us make decisions. And when we think about, as Meagan talked about, those more short-term stressors, cortisol is the necessary component to get our body going. But when it turns into chronic stress, this is when we see what you see in this photo, all the different types of effects that occur then on our body, because our body is not meant for that chronic long-term stress. And these are the effects that can take place. And it's interesting because we hear a lot, especially in the first world, we hear a lot of like people saying, oh, I'm allergic to this food or that food. And you don't hear of that in third world countries. They just eat what is available to them. And I don't have statistics on this, but I wonder how much of this is really related to our stress, because I for sure notice stress in my body. I tend to get a lot of stomach aches when I'm stressed. And when I'm in periods that, I'm kind of at my baseline, things are going pretty well, I'm not super stressed, I don't have those bodily issues. But all of a sudden, when my stress is increasing, I'm starting to get headaches, stomach aches, things like that. So you will notice it manifesting in your body. Again, cortisol is helpful in the short term, and it really gets our body moving into that fight or flight mode, because our blood sugar is up, our blood is flowing, but it's not the time to be, focusing on other things, other functions of our body. You're not going to be going to make a baby when you're in a stage of high stress. Your body is solely focused on how do I take care of this issue. So let's go ahead and go to our next slide and kind of focus on how do we know if what our baseline is, and how do we know when our bucket is spilling over. So if you take a look at this diagram here, kind of look at what is my baseline, and that's going to be different for each of us. The amount of stress that one person can handle with ease is going to be different from, your coworker, your partner, people close to you in your life. But as your stress goes up, you're going to start to see a lot of those changes, both in your body and in your mind. And our vulnerability factors are really important to look at. So when we think about vulnerability factors, Meagan mentioned sleep. That's a really important one, because we're not meant to function on less than 7 hours of sleep. If you're constantly functioning on less than 7 hours of sleep, that's a big vulnerability factor. Others include our hormones. You know, where are we, for example, for women, where are we in our cycle? Hormones fluctuate throughout that month, and that can make a big difference. If you have a project today and you're in the midst of that project and you got in an argument with your spouse or your children, you're teaching children from home because of COVID. Luckily, I think for most people that's ended now, but those are huge vulnerability factors that are making your baseline is not the same as what it once was. Another thing to look at is, what are the coping strategies that you have, perhaps naturally, or what are the ones that you're using on a daily basis to take care of yourself? And we're going to talk a lot about those later in the presentation. But if you're not completing the stress cycle, and if your vulnerability factors are high, this is where you're going to start to feel that burnout and start to feel some mental health problems sneaking in, perhaps anxiety, perhaps depression. You're noticing your motivation is low, you're irritable with loved ones, you're functioning at a lower baseline than you normally would be.
Yep. So with all of that, really, we can only take so much stress before it just topples over, and all of the things that we maybe don't want happening start happening. Our body doesn't make mistakes. It knows what it can handle. It knows what it can do. It knows how it's supposed to run. And as our stress kind of starts overflowing in that bucket, things are going to start happening that it will give you signals. And I think what we're trying to say today is, hopefully we don't get to that point where, hey, my bucket's so overflown, my body is shutting down. I have been there. So how do we kind of prevent that from happening? And how do we recognize if there are little signs telling us something is going wrong, before the whole thing kind of overflows? So something that has been really important for me to work through in my healing journey, and something that I'm really passionate about talking about, is eating disorders and chronic dieting. Our bodies know what they need. We're not meant to look the same. We're not meant to weigh the same. All of our bodies are different, and our bodies know what they need to eat. And for me, I really tried to control that and say, like, you don't need to eat this, you don't need to eat that. No, like, this is what you're supposed to look like. And just constantly restricting myself, that's stressful on your body, because your body's like, hey, I need this thing and you're not giving it to me. Like, now what do? I need to start kind of shutting down some of my systems because I don't have the fuel that I need. And the same kind of goes with overtraining. If you're working out 5, 6, 7 days a week, yes, exercise is helpful in closing the stress cycle, and we'll talk about that later. But if you're not eating enough and you're working out too much and you have all of this other stress that you're not really processing, this is when things can kind of start to lead to some issues. And you see that showing up here, like my hair was falling out, like your thyroid, your adrenals, your hormones, things just start not working right. We saw that from what Maggie was talking about. All of the different systems are connected. Just if you're constantly hungry, that probably means you're not eating enough. Like, if your body is telling you, I'm hungry, I would just kind of think about, what are the habits that you have, and what is my body telling me that I need? And just thinking about some examples here, like, we went through a long time ago seasons of feast and famine. We grew and we lost. Like, there are just different seasons that our bodies go through. If you think about athletes, they train really hard and work really hard during their season, and then they have their off season. Like, we need to go through that and allow and accept what our bodies are. and giving them what they need so that we can close the cycle. If we're not eating enough and we're working out too hard, we're never going to be able to close that stress cycle.
So how do we manage it? What do we do? And this is the big question, right? Because every single person here can say, yeah, I'm stressed. I've been stressed. I'm going to be stressed. And what do I do about it? And so I think it's important to first understand that emotions, every emotion that we experience as humans, first of all, they exist for a reason. And we have, well, they're involuntary. You cannot control how you feel. Don't ever let anyone tell you you shouldn't feel that way. I talk about that a lot with clients because a lot of times I hear people say that to their partners or judging themselves. I shouldn't feel this way. Why? Emotions are involuntary neurological responses. You cannot control how you feel. You can control your behavior and what you do to handle those emotions. So think of a tunnel. When you're going through a tunnel, driving through a tunnel, especially if it's a long one, it gets dark. You have to get to the end of the tunnel, all the way to the end, to see the light. The same is true of your emotions. You have to process them. You have to work all the way through them. Stress is the same way. It's no exception. You have to work through the stress and finish the stress cycle. So it's not just about solving the problem. It is about feeling the emotion and learning to cope with it. We have this phrase in therapy, what you resist will persist. And that's why you'll find that if you just push away, Meagan gave the example of an eating disorder, using perfectionism or using unhealthy ways of dealing with emotions, drinking, over drinking or substance use, using food, using using a person as your punching bag, but not working through the emotion yourself. You're resisting it and it will keep coming back. It's why we keep struggling with these issues. So we have to go through this physiological shift and processing of the emotion, not just an intellectual shift. We can't just say, it's okay, I'm okay now. That's not going to solve our problem or finish the stress cycle. So let's use this example of the lion. If you're being chased by a lion, clearly your stress is extremely high. Your cortisol is pumping, your adrenaline is rushing, and you're running, you run to safety. That's your automatic response. And perhaps when you get to safety, whether it's your home or a friend's home or wherever you end up, that you're now safe, what do? You jump for joy, you praise God that you're alive, you find a friend, you hug it out, maybe you cry because you're safe, you're alive. In that moment, you're celebrating, you feel this gratitude that you've survived, you're alive. So was it the removal of the lion that completed the cycle? Actually, it wasn't. What completed the cycle was all of those things that you did when you got to safety, even the running, because running was movement. But especially once you got to the safety and you celebrated in these photos, you see, okay, I'm in my home, I'm now with my community, and I'm celebrating, I'm laughing, I'm grateful. That is what is completing the cycle. So most of us aren't being chased by lions these days. So let's talk about some more concrete examples of that you may be facing in your everyday life and how to handle those things. So One thing you can do, let's say you're at work, you're in the middle of a meeting, or you're at home and your children are, constantly nagging or whining or needing something, and you're in the midst of 5 different projects and you feel that stress in your body. I would encourage all of you to start to look at, where do I feel it? I know for me personally, my heart starts pounding, my thoughts start racing, and I feel this sort of catastrophic, like, oh my God, I'm never going to get this done. And I really have to stop and breathe, because when my mind is jumping to those conclusions, I'm feeling that in my body, and I end up being irritable with my loved ones, which doesn't help at all. And then I feel worse about myself, because I'm like, great, I'm not living within my values. I'm snapping at people around me. I want to model for my child and just in general be a kind person. Patience is not my strongest virtue, people, but I'm working on it. So pausing, there's an acronym that I like to use. It's just STOP. So S is stop what you're doing. T, take a step back. O, observe your emotion. Label it. What am I feeling right now? Okay, this isn't helping me. So P, proceed mindfully. And we can use this in so many different situations, but particularly if you're in the midst of that meeting and your boss calls you out and you're like, oh my God, what do I do? And that stress, that cortisol is pumping and that stress is kicking in. Pause for a second. And some that you can do right in the midst of that meeting would be breathing. Breathing is so important. And I know that you hear this all the time, but that's because it's effective. If we just take a second to take deep breaths, I've done this in the middle of therapy sessions that have been very stressful. And my client can't tell that I'm doing it, but if you feel in your body those responses, that's something you can do right there in the moment. Some of the others you see here, laughter has to be genuine laughter, though. It can't be fake laughter. We've all got that social laugh that perhaps we use in moments of awkwardness. It has to be genuine laughter. So if you can take a moment at your desk and watch, I don't know, whatever you find humorous, whether it's, The Office or I know you don't have time to watch a whole episode, but perhaps a little 2-minute segment of your favorite show or your favorite comedian or an animal video or connecting with a friend. We look at that in a positive social interaction, because what do we do when we're stressed? We go to someone who understands. Going to a coworker who knows what we're going through and who knows that feeling. That's why we have to vent and get it out. And perhaps we cry with them. When you cry, you release cortisol. There's actually cortisol coming out in your tears. So crying is a really helpful coping skill that you can use in that moment. And getting that validation, getting that empathy from a coworker or a friend or your partner. Hugging is extremely useful, especially if it's a person you trust and you can really hold them for about 20 seconds, letting your body just go limp, kind of like we did in the progressive muscle relaxation. After that muscle's tense, let it just be limp. Doing that in your hug. Even petting one of your animals at home, or a 6-second kiss. These things help in that moment, releasing that stress. That's why for some people, their love language is really touch, because it's intimate and it's close and it leads to connection, and it's so helpful. Creative self-expression. This can be a way to really get out that, express yourself in a way that's not verbal. And finally, movement. Meagan talked about how we don't want to overburden our bodies, and how if you're only exercising for the point of losing weight or for fitness, not that there's anything wrong with taking care of your body, but if the sole purpose is I have to work out and if I don't do it, I'm going to just nag myself all day about it, then that's going to lead to more stress. However, movement is one of the best ways to complete the stress cycle. And movement doesn't have to just mean going for a run or going to the gym and doing really intense high interval training. It can be a walk. It can be yoga. It can be the progressive muscle relaxation that we did today. It can be dancing. Any type of movement is healthy and good for your body, and it completes that stress cycle. So we're going to get into the logistics of that, like how long do I need to move my body, and how is that going to help? But I would say if there's one thing that you could take with you today, remember some of these solutions and remember movement. Move your body. So important.
Yes, one of my favorite things that I learned about movement is shaking, like literally just like shake it off. Like I kind of like to play the Taylor Swift song and just like shake it out. Like if I'm going into a big meeting or a presentation, just for a couple minutes, just like getting it out. I don't know if you've ever seen like animals, like my cats will just, they fall down or they're like playing around and then they'll stand up and they'll just shake it off and then they walk away. Like that shaking is a kind of movement that's helping get that cortisol out of your body. So again, these are all really great things that you can kind of implement, and especially think about like if I'm on a video call right now and I tensed my butt or I tensed my foot, like you wouldn't see that. So if I'm going in a stressful situation, I think there's all kinds of things that you can use in different moments to say, okay, something stressful just happened. I need to process this now. And maybe if you have, an hour before your next meeting and you're like, I just need to cry, I just need to get it out, like go and do it. Like these are things that we're saying, like if you don't do that and you just let it sit in you and you don't process it, then that's where it can lead to that kind of chronic stress levels.
Absolutely. And that's our next topic. So what's happening in my body? What's happening in my mind when I don't complete the stress cycle? So kind of looking here at this diagram, maybe some of you can relate to what's happening in my mind, maybe exacerbating the symptoms I feel in my body. And what we know in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which I use with so many clients because I think most of us can relate to, yes, when I talk to myself that way, it really causes me to feel shame or guilt or disappointment or whatever unhelpful emotion may then come up. And what happens then is we get stuck in the loop. Just as we see in this diagram, in CBT, we talk about how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all connected. And so what we know is behavior is actually the easiest thing to change. It's easier to change your behaviors than it is your thoughts or your feelings. So if we start with behaviors, using, for example, all of those skills that I shouldn't say all, you don't have to do every single one, but the ones that resonate most with you from the previous slide, we will start to feel a change then in our feelings, in our emotions as well, not just in our bodies. And then we can start that internal dialogue as well. So Meagan mentioned earlier that the stressor can be external, the project at work, the children, the argument you had with your partner, whatever it may be. It can be internal as well. So your negative self-talk can really get you stuck in this loop. So if you think about what's some of the negative self-talk that you yourself have, one that I notice quite a bit with clients is I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough is one that comes up for almost all of us as human beings at some point or another. And when we have that negative self-talk, obviously it's going to contribute to those unhelpful emotions. I don't want to label them as negative emotions, but the emotions that generally we don't want to feel. And that then contributes to perhaps unhelpful behaviors. Perhaps you start isolating. Perhaps you feel unmotivated and you kind of slack off at whatever project or job you're doing. Perhaps you don't have the energy then to be present for your loved ones. And you start to then notice how this, you get stuck in this loop, and you then start feeling more intense symptoms of anxiety or depression or other mental health problems. And so research shows us that it's the first element of burnout, emotional exhaustion, that is most strongly linked to the impact on our health, our relationships, and our work. So if you're not completing that stress cycle, and you're starting to feel burnout, you're starting to feel emotional exhaustion, this is going to impact those areas of your life, your health, your relationships, and your work. And it's certainly going to impact your mental health as well. And we know that all of these things are linked. So taking action, completing the stress cycle, developing healthy patterns, healthy behaviors, some of the ones we talked about on our previous slide, are so important for every area of your life. And so you might be asking, how do I know if I'm here? Megan's going to help us understand, how do we know if we're in that burnout phase?
Yep. So I know for me, the kind of emotional burnout that's just like, I've cared so much about everything and I've given so much of myself that I just can't care anymore. Like I just don't have those emotions. Like trying to numb the pain also kind of numbs the joy. And so you're really just not feeling a lot. And you're that burnout for me is just like, yes, like I just feel like I can't really give anymore. And I just feel like I'm trying to survive. And that is not how we want people to feel. That is not how you're meant to feel. If you are feeling that way, I think it's fair and you're not alone in that. And also there are things that you can do to get out of that. So some other symptoms that you might be having, again, because we know that cortisol is linked to all of these different systems in our body, you could start to have, for extended periods of time, if you're in that chronic stress, you could constantly be having bloating, diarrhea, constipation, some of these things going on with our digestive system. So for me, just kind of sharing a lot here, just in the spirit of helping people understand that this is real and that they're not alone. Like I was taking Miralax every single day, like just because I was so stressed. Like our bodies are telling us like, no, this isn't the time to go to the bathroom. We don't have time for that. Go, keep going. Like, okay, this is what happens then. And so if you're in that time of stress, if you're trying to run away from a lion, like that's not the time to go to the bathroom, and your body knows that. But it doesn't know the difference of I'm being chased by a lion versus I'm telling myself I'm not good enough. Like stress is stress. And so all of that stuff, it can be causing you to experience some of these symptoms. So other things, hormones being off, we know that cortisol is it is a hormone and it's connected to other types of hormones. So my cycle has not been regular for a while now. I'm still working on trying to get that back into regularity. Acne, like I was getting kind of zits popping up, especially around my jawline, which is indicative of hormone imbalances. Low libido. So again, you're running away from a lion, that's not the time to, be intimate with someone. So your body's like, nope, we don't need that, cut it off. And again, if you're chronically experiencing stress, like that kind of just goes away. Waking up at 3 a.m., I did this almost every single night. Like I, again, thought a lot of these things were normal. Like, oh, I'm not supposed to sleep well. Like I just wake up in the middle of the night, and that's not what your body needs. Your cortisol is rising too early. I probably wasn't eating enough to sustain me to stay asleep. Like, hey, wake up, I'm hungry. Like there's a lot of things that could be happening here of why your sleep could be off. Then you start to stress about like, oh, I can't sleep, I have too much to do. And it really is a cycle Maggie was kind of talking about earlier. Like you might start stressing about the fact that you're stressed and you're not sleeping. And so how do you kind of break yourself out of this cycle? We'll talk about a little bit later. The brain fog that's mentioned here is a really key sign of being in chronic stress. If you feel like you can't focus, it's hard to make decisions, there's just a lot of things going on in your head, it doesn't feel like you can think clearly, that's kind of a sign that something is off. And that can also kind of be related to your hormones being off, your blood sugar being off. So all of these systems, again, are really just tied together. And if you're experiencing a lot of these, we'll talk through a little bit of things that you can do to get out of them, but also know that there are, like health coaches, nutritional coaches, wellness people that you can reach out to get specific help for what's happening in your body. So kind of just taking a breath. Stress, this quote for me, I'm fumbling over my words because when I read it, I was like just so impacted by it. A lot of the stress that we cause ourselves is because we're not allowing ourselves to just be in the moment. I have to do this. I need to do this. I didn't do this. I should have done that. Remember when, or what if. There are a lot of things that we think about or we're planning for or we're trying to knock off of our list that isn't just being here in the moment. It isn't really just saying, yeah, I have digestive issues and that's okay. And it came here for a reason. It isn't just like, okay, I'm in this meeting learning about stress for myself and I'm going to be here and I'm going to be present. I'm going to, type in the chat and I'm going to interact with other people. Like we don't allow ourselves to do those kinds of things. And then it's causing more stress on top of it. We can't control anything that is going to happen to us, or anything that has happened is already happened. So we kind of just really need to live in the moment, listen to what our bodies are telling us, and say, what do I need right now to be my best self, to bring the energy that I have to keep getting through and hopefully working towards thriving instead of just surviving. So when we think about how can I not get into the chronic stress? How can I be in the moment? How can I help myself? How can I close the cycle and really, do what help my body do what it's meant to do? So we kind of talked about earlier that grid of what are all the things that are the stressors in your life, and are there certain ones of those that you can get rid of? And I know that feels really hard to say, like, I can't say no, I can't cross things off my list. I have to do it all. These things just have to be there. And I think that some of that is true, and some of that is a story that we're telling ourselves of, because I'm not good enough, I have to do all of these other things that might help me feel like I'm good enough. And so when you really think about what are the things that bring me joy, what are the things that bring my family joy, what are the things that we need to do to be healthy, to live the lives that we want to live, and what are those things do we not? And one of the examples we're talking about here is traffic. Could you take a bus? Could you take a train? If your workplace is going to let you work remote, like how do you think about hybrid workforces? Like what are some of the things that we can cut down on? Do you always need to be in back-to-back meetings? Can you make your meetings be 25 minutes instead of 30? Like there are a lot of different ways I think you can start to get creative about cutting down some of the stress in your life. And if you're in a state of chronic stress and brain fog and you're in that anxiety loop, it can be really hard to say, let me step out of this. So this is where I think also getting help and talking to other people can be helpful. Like, what are some ideas? What are things that you do? Like, what are ways that I can cut some things out? And having a conversation with your partner as a family of like, these are the things that we're going to commit to, and these are the things we're not. There will always be stress. There are things we have to do that we don't always love. So how can we kind of reframe that so that when something stressful is happening, we can appreciate the moment, we can be in the moment and say, this is happening for a reason. Like, I think there was a study about people who were stuck in traffic and they were either daydreaming about something else or they were just in the moment being there. And the people that were happier were the people that were just in the moment and taking it in. You know, like, I'm going to crank up my music. I'm going to listen to a podcast. I'm going to take some deep breaths and close the cycle from earlier in the day. What are things that you can do in that moment to say, I'm grateful, I'm here, and it is what it is. There's nothing I can do to get out of this situation. So I need to just help my body process through it. I went for a hike the other weekend and was going straight downhill on a bunch of really slick rocks that was like just life threatening. I'm like, I could die from going down these rocks. Like, this is not safe. And all I kept repeating in my head was, I can't do this. This is terrible. I don't want to do this. Like, get me out of here. And then I was like, that isn't helping me. How is this helping me? It isn't helping me. So instead, I could say to myself, I can do this. My body knows how to do this. I'm safe. I'm fine. I will be fine. This is okay. And like, just feel my body loosening up and it knows what to do. And it made the whole, rest of the hour downhill trip so much more enjoyable than just beating myself up about it and being so nervous about it.
And Megan, I wanted to interject because I agree with you on that. Is so much of it is about, like Maggie taught me a lot about helpful thoughts. Like, is this helpful? Is it helpful for you to tell yourself, oh my gosh, I'm about to plummet to my death in that instance? No, it is not. It is not a helpful thought. And I found myself yesterday, it was my first day coming back from vacation, being out of office, and I found myself really worked up. Like, the vacation's not even worth it. Why do I do this to myself? And I really had to reframe. Helpful thoughts are, you are going to do the best you can today. And if that has to be enough, because that is all you can do. And it just instantly started to calm myself I've never under delivered, right? I will deliver, and this is what it will be. But I think that helpful thoughts, I always ask myself that question now, since Maggie taught me that, and it's been a huge game changer for me.
Stevie, I'm so glad that you brought that up. I mean, what a fabulous example, because going on vacation is supposed to be this rejuvenation and this feeling of, yeah, I can take a break and I'm going to allow that for myself. And when we get back, our stress is higher because we've taken a break and the work is still there. So that's a fabulous example. And I mean, I use that question on myself and I teach it to a lot of people because it's so useful to be able to ask ourselves, is this helping me? And I think that's on one of our slides coming up. I was
just going to say, I think that that's getting a lot of like chatter in the chat box of like, as we feel that anticipation and anxiety. Yes. But if we can think about this as unplugging for renewal and rejuvenation is actually a part of your annual workload and plan, right? It has to be, because those moments of rest have to be a part of closing the stress cycle and allowing for yourself to have that self-awareness and be aware of how you feel at moments of rest. So your body can remember that stress isn't the normal, is not the normal place of being.
Yes, stress
And
isn't your baseline.
it's not your baseline. And I think that that's the part of like it, what will get done will get done. And it has to be as you're planning it, everything out. I think that that's like part of the project management piece of your life. You know, we have several project managers, it looks like on here. And I think that that's the part that we just always forget is that renewal is crucial for survival and avoiding burnout. It's a part of being a leader and empowering yourself to take care of yourself.
It's absolutely crucial. And I love the example you gave about how you reframed your thinking. You said, I have never under delivered. And anyone who knows Stevie knows that that is 1,000% true. She has never under delivered. And so what's so beautiful about that is that you, while you were stressed and while you were having negative or unhelpful thoughts, you changed those thoughts because even though, yes, each of us internally, our internal dialogue and our internal core beliefs that we have about ourselves and the world, we have some negative ones, but we also have positive ones. And Stevie, by you reframing that, what I hear is, what I know about myself, Stevie Carr, is that I never underdeliver. So I will get this done. It may not be exactly what I thought it was going to look like, but I will deliver this and it will be amazing. And so what you did there was number 2. And in the CBT world, we call that finding a balanced alternative to our negative thinking. So the example I gave earlier of feeling like I'm not good enough. You know, this is one that I hear constantly. And of course, I myself have thought that at many different times in my life. So if we believe that about ourselves, and if we stay in those thoughts, it's how is it going to impact us? It may be different for each of us, but it's almost never a positive impact. So let's look at how can we change that thought. We want to meet these 3 criteria of being balanced, being realistic, and being positive or hopeful. So you don't want to change the thought from I'm not good enough to I'm the best director in the world, or I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, or whatever the case may be, that you're not feeling good enough. You want to change that thought to something that's positive, realistic, and balanced. So something like what Stevie did of, instead of saying, I can't do this, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm never going to catch up, she changed it to, I have never underdelivered. I will get this done. You might change the thought of I'm not good enough to something like I'm not where I want to be right now, but I'm working towards my goals every day. And that applies to so many different scenarios, whether it's something like the work project you're doing, or the way you're parenting, or the way you are partnering, or the way you are working towards individual goals. So really pay attention to that internal dialogue and that negative self-talk and how it's impacting you.
No, I love that. And I just to kind of close out like that thought, Meagan, to your point of like, isn't it arrogant? I think that that's part of, as I become more aware of my own ego, I have been able to identify these key moments. And I think that that's where I really think that that's a lot of what drives me towards, and what led me to burnout was my ego. That red flag, nope, better than that, don't need that. Oh, what? Like, I don't need to stop and eat a meal, or this and that. And I do think that, one thing that I've gotten feedback on is when I do stop to renew, I'm a better leader. I'm a better community. I'm more engaged. I'm more present. I already received that feedback since I've been back this week, and from somebody that is giving me a lot of feedback about how my poker face is terrible when I'm stressed out. So I think that there's that anxiety is contagious and so is calm. And I'll let you guys get back into that. But I think that as leaders and motivators and people who want to be perceived that way, I think that being able to understand that that is the end product, is the best version of yourself, shows up when you are able to close that cycle and you are able to, really reinvest back in yourself and renew. So it's great.
Absolutely, Stevie. And I'm glad you used that example and were able to take that feedback for yourself. I think it does help you become a better leader. And I love that, the people you work with have already noticed that change in you because you took that time to rejuvenate and renew yourself. Yeah. So let's talk about how do we prime our brain and our body? We've talked about movement. We've talked about the why. Why are we doing movement? Is it just for exercise? Is it just to lose weight? Diving into what is the why behind this experience, and always asking ourselves that question. And knowing that movement is so important in closing the stress cycle, but that there are lots of different kinds of movement, and you don't have to go out and run a marathon to close the cycle. You can dance, you can do yoga, you can go for a walk with a friend. There are so many ways to find that movement and to take care of yourself. And, we also think about, Meagan mentioned earlier, mindfulness. And I know this is another topic that is really, it's a very popular kind of, I think a lot of people talk about it, and I'm not sure how impactful it becomes because it's sort of trendy. But the interesting thing is that mindfulness, really at the heart of it, is learning just to be present. So if your mind is constantly racing to the next thing, the thing you didn't get done, the project you should, quote unquote, should be working on, the to-do list, the things you need to do tomorrow, are you able to really enjoy what you're doing right now in this moment? It's interesting. I have found, I have a 7-month-old baby, and since he was born, I'm sure any of you who are parents, you see how fast kids change, and especially when they're really little. I mean, literally every day, every week, something is changing in your child. And so I have really been practicing this, not that I sit and meditate for any length of time. I'll be honest, I don't practice meditation. It's something I would like to do in the future, but I am practicing mindfulness. And for me, that just means really savoring the moment that I'm in, the family time, the moments I have with my baby. And it has truly helped me to be present and to not always be thinking about what I'm more of that person. What do I need to do? What do I need to get done? What's on my list? And so being able to just sit and enjoy what is happening right now in my life. But it's good to ask ourselves, what are some small practices that we can do, perhaps to start our day, to end our day? Someone put in the chat box earlier, journaling. Yes, we have that here. Gratitude, affirmations, prayer, music, journaling, whatever feels right for you. And perhaps just changing 5 minutes at the beginning of your day or 5 minutes at the end of your day to practice these things, as opposed to, are you sitting on social media? How much time do you spend on social media or just on your phone each day? Kind of numbing out, right? Because as we scroll through social media, we're numbing, we're dopamine is being released in our brain, but it's not connection. It's not the type of joy that we experience when we have interpersonal connection, or when we practice some of these really important skills that truly bring joy and bring a sense of peace into our lives. So yes, mindfulness is kind of that buzzword that we hear a lot, but it's it's like that for a reason. And another thing that, Meagan talked about was reducing the incoming stressors. So as Stevie said, is this helpful? Is this person in my life bringing me joy, bringing me stress? How do I perhaps need to set some boundaries around the people in my life? That was a big one for me because I, in my 20s, really started to evaluate how are the people around me either making me a better person or starting to bring out some of the things in me that, aren't within my value system or aren't helping me be the best version of myself. And that causes stress too. That is a huge amount of stress. So learning to set boundaries, which is a topic we've touched on before and will continue to touch on in the future, because people absolutely bring us stress. And if they're family or coworkers or people that are around us all the time, that's chronic. That's constantly there. So asking ourselves, is this helpful? Is this thought helpful? Is this person helpful? How do I perhaps need to set some boundaries with myself or with these other people in my life? So let's talk about how do we make this a regular practice? We've talked about a lot of different strategies, and Meagan has a lot listed here that are really wonderful. But what's so important about this, and what I think we have to tap into, is that just as you brush your teeth every day, twice a day, morning and night, so that you have healthy oral hygiene and don't lose your teeth, we have to practice these things every day. We have to make them a regular part of our lives. And I know that that's hard. I know that when you've had a long day and you've had a stressful day, sometimes the last thing you want to do is go take care of yourself. It's easier to just lie down on the couch and zone out and watch TV. I am definitely guilty of that sometimes. Truthfully, I do think some of those things help you. They help calm and they help you take a moment for yourself. But if you're only doing that, if you're not doing any of these other practices to close the stress cycle, just, vegging out is not going to be enough to close the loop. So we have to make it a practice. We have to find time in our daily lives. We have to sleep. We have to check that internal dialogue. How is our negative self-talk impacting or exacerbating the stress that we're in? And so practicing any of these routines can be really helpful. Some of the research that Meagan and I found, and actually a presentation that I had last year at my full-time job, talked about really hands-on coping skills that we can do on a regular basis. You guessed it, the very first one was taking care of your body, movement. And what they found is that if you practice 4 times a week for 20 minutes, raising your heartbeat with any of those movements that we've talked about, and you practice this for 6 weeks, you will actually see, if you did a PET scan of your brain, a reduction in cortisol in your hippocampus. So movement, again, the number one thing is movement. So 4 days a week for 20 minutes for 6 weeks, especially during times of high stress. So if you've got that deadline approaching and you're feeling the burnout, practicing this. The next one is social support, which we've already talked about, but talking to a friend, talking to a coworker who understands what you're going through, talking to your partner, go for a walk with your partner, and you're doing both of these things at the same time, talking about your stress, talking about, how difficult this project has been for you. You're getting your social support and you're getting your movement at the same time. And again, identify the people who bring stress into your life versus those who help you manage it. That is really pivotal in in completing the cycle. Next, we talk about self-efficacy. So how do you advocate for yourself? How do you ask for help? We know that asking for help, especially for women and for people who are perfectionists, asking for help is extremely hard to do. So learning to delegate, learning to say, I've reached my limit and I need help with this project. I need help with the kids. Maybe that means hiring help. Maybe that means your partner has to step up and make some changes. Maybe that means you have to delegate the work project, but learning that self-efficacy and practicing it is hugely important. And last is making meaning and finding purpose. So, understanding that for each of us, that looks different. For some, it may be religion or spirituality. For some of us, it may mean making meaning of a situation that, at one point we didn't understand. We all ask ourselves, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? And so finding a way to heal from that, whether it's a large trauma or a small trauma, making meaning of that situation, and really processing it. And so whether that means processing it with a good friend whom you trust, with a pastor or a priest or a person that understands that spiritual side of you, or with a therapist or a coach, someone who can help you work through that situation. These are all ways to help complete that cycle. But again, making this a practice, making it part of your everyday life, 5 minutes, beginning of the day, 5 minutes at the end of the day, or taking that hour to go to therapy, taking that hour to talk to your friend, even though you both have kids and your life is crazy hectic. Again, go for a walk with that friend, then you're doing 2 things at once. So I'm curious if people have methods that have been helpful for them, or ways that they've practiced these things, found ways to incorporate these things in their busy schedules. If you want to share in the chat box, I'm sure all of us, I know I would love to hear how you've incorporated this into your life.
Yeah, I would say too, like, something for me is like starting small. Like, this list is really maybe kind of intimidating or overwhelming of, I can't do all of these things every day. And that's good. Great. We don't want you to do all of these things every day. What can you do? And when can you do it? And just thinking about what are those little moments, like if I'm scrolling through social media, catching myself and saying, is this really bringing me joy? Is this helping me achieve the things that I want to achieve? Or could I spend the next 3 minutes doing some deep breathing? Could I go outside for 10 minutes? Like, what are the things that you're doing and you're realizing, like, maybe I'm trying to numb, I'm trying to zone out, but the things that I'm doing aren't really getting me where I want to go, and just doing it in stages. So maybe this week you're going to try to go to bed 10 minutes earlier. And then the next week it's 10 minutes earlier than that. Like, starting small and not making these things stress you out more. Because I got to that point of where I was so stressed. I was in that burnout phase, like my whole body was shutting down. I started getting help for it and like got this huge list of things to do. And I was like, I can't do all of this. And then I started to stress more. Now I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough, and I think it's just really about what are the things that do work for you and how do you make a little bit more time for that? And we're humans and we're not meant to be alone in doing that. We're meant for connection. So how do you, like Maggie was talking about, bring in other people into this and share? For me, like sharing my story, sharing what I was going through really helped, just in getting me where I wanted to be. So seeing
Meagan,
a lot of things coming in the chat too. I love this.
Yeah, and Meagan, I love that you brought that up, because setting small attainable goals is super important for every area of our life. So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to get rid of social media, maybe we say, I'm going to be more cognizant of how much time I spend. And instead of scrolling through Facebook for 15 minutes, I'm going to spend 5 minutes. Or the other goals, if movement is something you realize, gosh, I really need to incorporate this in my life, I would suggest setting small and attainable goals towards movement instead of saying every day I need to go work out for an hour. Well, that's a huge goal, especially if right now you don't spend any time moving your body. So perhaps saying, I'm going to move for 20 minutes, 3 days a week, or because of our research, maybe you want to say 4 days a week, but starting small and working up towards, you can always set your goal, reset your goal. If you've reached it and you're feeling like, okay, this is sustainable, I can set a new goal. I saw in the chat box that someone said, Bree said, I put my phone upstairs when I get home so I can really unplug. And how much is that going to increase the connection and the quality time then that you spend with your loved ones, because your phone is upstairs charging and away from you? I love that.
And Maggie, I would say that's, as we're kind of closing out here, what I would encourage everybody to take away from today is, is there one thing that you can leave with today that you're going to try to do and implement today? And whether can you capture that on a Post-it? Can you put it on I put it on my calendar actually, and try to hold myself accountable to that time and scheduling out time, because I find that if I have free time, that free time isn't, I don't respect that. I fill it with stuff. So I know you guys are kind of closing out, but I want to make sure that if you guys have any last minute things that you want to share with the group before we end today, that we do that. Thank you.
I'll just close with this quote of saying sometimes the most productive thing you can do is relax, and really just giving yourself the time, the grace, the space. You're worth it. Your body is worth it. Your mind is worth it. You're worth it. So
I love that.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, and I appreciate everybody's investment. And thank you so much for the both of you for sharing this incredible experience with us. We absolutely want to make sure that we touch on a few different things that we have coming up that you can continue to invest in yourself. First, I would say absolutely the Wellness and Enterprises Quantum Energy. If you don't know a lot about quantum energy, the law of abundance, the law of attraction, all of those pieces, it sounds woo-woo, but is very data science backed. And that is my favorite type of information. We have a book club. Thank you for mentioning that, Meagan. And we also have a lot of other different experiences coming up. Next week, we have Secrets of Successful Women. It's all about how we're looking to build a women's wealth network with Fifth Third Private Bank. We find that occupational wellness and financial wellness are two areas most overlooked in women's wellness. And as we look at the whole self, it's something that we can no longer deny, that it's no longer about work-life balance, but it's about work-life integration. And how do you really embrace being a career person and bringing that whole self to life in a way that we can bring in all of these pieces to manage our stress, but allowing for ourselves to also have the community and resources to be able to support one another. So thank you so much again for this. We definitely will be reaching out to all of you if you have any interest in continuing this conversation about stress. I think that it would be worthwhile to look to plan a part 2 on this, because I know I definitely have a lot of questions for both of you, and I've really enjoyed today's conversation, really rooted in a lot of the data and science behind what this does to our bodies and our brains and our hearts. So thank you again for joining and investing in yourself, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you all. Take care.